The Serpent's Flight, a magical encounter at 30,000 feet. Clara adjusted her emerald green belly dancing outfit as she settled into her seat. The silk scarf around her hips shimmered under the cabin lights, and her gold bangles jingled softly with each movement. She was returning to New York after a dazzling performance at an international belly dancing contest. Exhausted but still glowing from the applause, she glanced at the in-flight entertainment screen. The movie was *Snakes on a Plane. Clara chuckled. "How fitting," she murmured to herself, though she had hoped for something less dramatic for the long flight. Clara chuckled. "How fitting," she murmured to herself, though she had hoped for something less dramatic for the long flight. Clara chuckled. "How fitting," she murmured to herself, though she had hoped for something less dramatic for the long flight. "Perfect choice, don't you think?" The voice came from the man in the seat beside her. He was striking, blonde hair slicked back, a devilish smile, and piercing blue eyes. He wore a velvet jacket and had an air of mischief about him. "I guess," Clara replied with a polite smile, not entirely comfortable with the stranger's intense gaze. "I guess," Clara replied with a polite smile, not entirely comfortable with the stranger's intense gaze. "I guess," Clara replied with a polite smile, not entirely comfortable with the stranger's intense gaze. He leaned closer. "Name's Lucien. I dabble in illusions." He flicked his wrist, and a coin appeared between his fingers. "A magician, if you will." Clara nodded, turning back to her screen, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Lucien's tricks were far from ordinary. The flight attendants began serving meals. Clara opened her tray, the scent of warmed airline chicken wafting up. Just as she picked up her fork, Lucien whispered, "Wouldn't it be fun if this became real?" Before Clara could respond, her meal shifted. The chicken slid off her plate, and from the rice, something slithered. A thin, scaled body emerged, winding its way upward. Clara gasped as the snake's head rose, its forked tongue flicking near her face. The passengers around her were still engrossed in the movie, oblivious to the live horror unfolding at her seat. The passengers around her were still engrossed in the movie, oblivious to the live horror unfolding at her seat. The passengers around her were still engrossed in the movie, oblivious to the live horror unfolding at her seat. "Is this a joke?" Clara hissed, trying to keep her voice low. She shot a glare at Lucien, who was grinning wickedly. "It's all in good fun," he said, his voice smooth as silk. He wiggled his fingers, and the snake coiled tighter around her tray. Clara's instincts kicked in. She grabbed her scarf and, with a fluid motion honed from years of dancing, looped it around the snake. She flung it toward the aisle, where it landed with a soft thud. The snake slithered off, disappearing beneath the seats. Clara glared at Lucien, who was laughing quietly. "You're insane," she whispered harshly. "Perhaps," Lucien said, his eyes sparkling. "But you must admit, it spiced up the flight." Clara narrowed her eyes. "If another snake shows up, I'll make sure it bites **you**. Lucien smirked, but he raised his hands in mock surrender. "Fair enough." For the rest of the flight, Clara kept her guard up, her sharp eyes darting to her tray and every shadowy corner. As the plane descended toward New York, she breathed a sigh of relief, already planning to avoid magicians and suspicious in-flight meals on her next journey.